Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Mast. I'm going to read the Unit 1 Anticipation Guide on Taxonomy. The directions say before reading the text, read each statement and mark true or false in the before reading column. If you don't know, just take a guess. You are not penalized for wrong answers, but leaving this column blank will lower your score. Next, read the indicated pages, figure, or table indicated after each statement and find out if you are right. Write the correct answer in the after reading column. If the answer is false in the after reading column, then either write the statement to make it true or write why it is false in the space below. Finally, do all of your writing in a contrasting color like red or purple. Do this by clicking the A above. So right here you click that and you would choose a different color. It just helps us with grading. So here's the before reading and here's the after reading. So the first question says, scientists classify trees that have acorns together and name them oaks. This is an example of taxonomy. This is found on page 180. So have you ever compared the leaves of hickory, pecan, and walnut trees? Have you noticed the similarities among the flowers of an apple, pear, and peach? If you observe that these plants resemble each other, it is because they belong to the same plant families. Plants and all living organisms are organized by their relationships to each other. This system of grouping like organisms together is called classification. The science of naming and classifying organisms is called taxonomy. Taxonomy provides a useful framework for understanding the features of similar plants, including their growth habitats, their physical makeup, and their response to environmental conditions. Familiarity with closely related plants helps growers and gardeners know what to expect when growing a new plant for the first time. Taxonomy also allows horticulturalists to easily communicate throughout the world by using universal specific names and minimizing confusion that comes from common names. So you'll find the answer to number 1 in what I just read. Number 2 says the scientist Theophrastus described more than 1,300 plants and placed them into classes. This will be found on page 180. History of plant taxonomy. The earliest record of categorizing plants into groups belongs to Theophrastus, an assistant to Aristotle. Theophrastus divided plants by their growth characteristics into trees, shrubs, half-shrubs, and herbs. He observed a wide range of plants' features, including the seed structure, germination, and plant habitat range. He described several plant families, including the parsley family. He noted the umbrella shape of the flower clusters among parsley, fennel, and chervil. His categorization essentially remains the same in today's modern classification. In the middle of the 18th century, a Swedish naturalist, Carl von Linné, suggested a classification based solely on the flower structures of plants. Better known as Carolus Linnaeus, the Latinized version of his name, he published Species Plantarum in 1753 and described more than 1,300 plants placed into classes. The plants were cataloged using the number of stamens, stamen characteristics, and the relationships of stamens to other floral parts. This system forms the basis of plant classification today. So you'll find the answer to number 2 in what I just read. Number 3 says using a common name for a plant can lead to confusion because the same plant may have been called different names in other parts of the world. Horticulturalists and gardeners generally refer to plants using a common name, a word or term in everyday language. For example, in the United States, the linden tree is a common landscape feature. In the United Kingdom, the same tree is called a lime tree. You can see that in figure 7-3 over here. The use of common names can lead to confusion and potential misunderstandings when communicating about living organisms. Carolus Linnaeus pioneered the consistent use of binomial nomenclature, which is a two-word naming system, to describe plant species. Prior to this system, different botanists might give a plant species different names. The binomial language developed by Linnaeus provides a methodological and consistent way to describe different plant species. For example, a red maple within this system has the name Acer rubrum, or Acer rubrum. Plant names must adhere to specific rules and are governed by the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. This code is a set of rules that guides the naming or renaming of plant species. So you'll find the answer to number 3 in what I just read. Number 4 says morphology refers to the physical structure of a plant. For example, the morphology of trees is they usually have one main stem, while bushes have many stems. A system of botanical classifications. Considered the father of taxonomy, Linnaeus set the stage for scientists to name plants using binomial nomenclature and also to organize plants in a hierarchical way that shows the relationships between plant species. While much of the taxonomy uses morphology, which is the physical form and structure of an organism, to classify plants, many new technologies have emerged in recent years to shift the approach some taxonomists use to organize plant species. Advances in physiological, biochemical, ecological, and molecular techniques make taxonomy a dynamic and changing field. Floral morphology of plants has determined how plants are classified since the early days of Theophrastus. It remains an important tool for botanists and horticulturalists to determine plant species. Observations of floral characteristics as well as close examination of leaf shape, margins, arrangements, and other key features aid in identification. If a new species is found, these characteristics help determine where the plant fits in the current classification scheme. These same features are used to readily identify plants in the horticultural trade. So you'll find the answer to number 4 in what I just read. Number 5 says the highest and most inclusive ranking of living organisms is a kingdom. Domain. For years, living organisms were separated into only 2 broad categories: prokaryotes, which are single-celled organisms without membrane-bound organelles, and eukaryotes, which are single-celled and multicellular organisms made of cells with membrane-bound organelles. These 2 divisions did not accurately reflect significant differences among prokaryotes. Through molecular techniques, scientists have now arranged organisms into 3 domains, which are the highest and most inclusive taxonomic ranking for all living organisms. These domains include eubacteria, meaning true bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes. You can see in figure 7-5 the examples of specific plants and classifications. And you'll find the answer to number 5 in what I just read. Number 6 says moss is a non-vascular plant. Non-vascular plants. Mosses are part of a group of non-vascular plants. They lack a vascular system for transporting water and nutrients throughout their structure. They are small in size, lack roots, stems, and leaves, and produce spores rather than seeds. Mosses, liverworts, and hornworts make up the group of non-vascular plants. Mosses can be considered a niche market of horticultural plants. They can also be viewed as a weed in the landscape. So you'll find the answer to number 6 in what I just read. Number 7 says fruit trees and vegetable plants are seedless vascular plants. Seedless vascular plants. Seedless vascular plants are more complex than their non-vascular counterparts. They have a vascular system comprised of xylem and phloem, allowing for movement of water and solutes. They have true roots, leaves, stems, and their spore-producing structures permit wide dispersal. Like the mosses, hornworts, and liverworts, the seedless vascular plants also require water in or on the soil for sperm to swim to the eggs for fertilization to occur. This group consists of ferns and their allies, the club mosses, horsetails, and whisk ferns. In figure 7-7 over here, the fern has the most horticultural value, with many species considered important in the ornamental landscape field. You'll find the answer to number 7 in what I just read. Number 8 says gymnosperms do not produce seeds. Gymnosperms. Non-flowering, seed-producing plants are called gymnosperms. The word gymnosperms means naked seed. These plants do not produce a seed within a protective structure of a fruit. Gymnosperms are wind-pollinated, and most, all except one species, have separate male and female reproductive structures called cones. Gymnosperms contain 4 phyla: the conifers, the cycads, the ginkgos, and the gymnophytes. Conifers contain numerous species of high economic importance in landscape horticulture, including pines, spruces, firs, cedars, junipers, and hemlocks. Ginkgo has only one living species. It has male and female gametophytes on separate trees that do not produce cones. So you'll find the answer to number 8 in what I just read. Number 9 says a species is 2 organisms that can breed and produce fertile offsprings. So we're going to jump down to species real quick. A species is the lowest and least inclusive ranking of plant classification and is the basic unit of biological classification. You can see in figures 7-11, you can see the hollies over here. A species has historically been defined as organisms capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring. The definition remains a primary tool, although advances in DNA comparisons and other molecular techniques, morphological traits, and ecological niches can also contribute to definition of a species. The presence of a unique trait or local adaptation may not warrant a new species, but might create a subspecies and possibly a variety. A subspecies is a subordinate to species and has enough variation, usually due to geographic isolation, to warrant a taxonomic ranking. The specific epithet is the second half of the binomial name of a plant species. Together, the genus name and the species epithet form the scientific name of a species. The specific epithet can describe a character trait, identify a person who discovered the plant, or honor a location where it is found. For example, the paper birch species, Betula papyrifera, has a specific epithet. Papyrifera is described the papery texture of its bark. The specific epithet never stands alone because many species may have the same specific epithet. The paper mulberry, for example, also has a specific epithet, papyrifera, but is defined by its species name, Browsonetia papyrifera. The specific epithet is always written in lowercase and either italicized or underlined in the same manner as the genus name. And that answers number 9. Number 10 says a different form of genus is called a variety. A variety is a more specific and distinct subset of a species than a subspecies. A variety is a form of species that is slightly different from, but is not different than warrant new species and hold horticultural values such as the leaf color, pattern, or thornlessness. A naturally occurring variation of Japanese maple is Acer palmaturin var with a variety, thornless,